I can't give you the real name of the place, so I'll just call it Blackhollow. It sits about 40 minutes outside a town you've never heard of, down a service road that isn't on any map you can pull up on your phone. From the outside, it looks like an old federal correctional facility, the kind that got quietly decommissioned sometime in the 90s. That's the point. It's supposed to look abandoned. It's supposed to look like the kind of place nobody would ever think to go looking for the things we actually keep inside. Most people think a prison for the reanimated is a joke. They picture rows of slack-jawed corpses shuffling into cells. And honestly, for about 60% of what we hold, that's not far off. Shamblers don't plan. Shamblers don't wait. Shamblers don't remember your face after you turn a corner. But I didn't take this job to babysit shamblers. And neither did anyone else who's been here longer than a year. We're not scared of the ones who forgot how to be people. We're scared of the ones who didn't. I've been working the lower levels of Blackhollow for a little under 8 months now, and in that time I've seen things that would get me laughed out of any conference room in the country if I ever tried to explain them. So I'm not going to try to explain them to a room full of scientists. I'm going to tell you what happened in order, and you can believe as much or as little of it as you'd like. I just hope, for your sake, that you never end up somewhere like Blackhollow yourself. I'd been doing infectious disease research for about 6 years before Blackhollow ever showed up on my radar. A recruiter reached out of nowhere, no LinkedIn message, no email trail, just a phone call from a blocked number offering triple my salary for what they called advanced containment consulting. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. Curiosity has always been my worst habit, and it's the reason I'm the one telling you this story instead of someone else. The first person I met at Blackhollow was a woman named Warden Iris Calloway, and if you'd passed her on the street, you'd have pegged her for a retired Marine, not the person in charge of the most dangerous containment facility in the country. She had a handshake that could crack walnuts, and a way of looking at you that made you feel like she already knew every mistake you were about to make before you made it. Consultants don't usually get a personal welcome from the warden, she told me as she led me through the first checkpoint. But consultants who ask the kinds of questions you asked in your interview usually don't last long down here either. I asked her what she meant by that. She just smiled and told me I'd find out soon enough. The lower levels of Blackhollow are organized by classification, and once you understand the classification system, everything else about the place starts to make a horrible kind of sense. Stage 1 are what most people picture when they think zombie. Newly turned, mindless, slow, driven by nothing but hunger. We don't even really contain those so much as store them, since they're about as dangerous as a rabid dog behind decent fencing. My job was interviews. I sat across from stage 3s, the lucid ones, and tried to get information out of them about how the infection spread, how it changed cognition. What, if anything, they remembered about their lives before. It sounds clinical when I put it that way. It didn't feel clinical. It felt like sitting across from a ghost that hadn't figured out it was dead yet. Most of my regular subjects gave me nothing useful. Fragments. Loops. The same 3 sentences repeated in slightly different orders. But one of them was different from the moment I met her. Her intake file said her name was Nadia Kessler, and before whatever happened to her, she'd been an ER nurse in a city I won't name. She was polite. She was articulate. She remembered small, specific details about her old life. The smell of her grandmother's kitchen, the name of a dog she'd had as a kid, in a way that none of the other stage 3s ever managed. My supervisor, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Petrov, warned me early on not to get too comfortable with her. She's good at sounding like someone worth trusting, he told me during my second week. That's exactly why you shouldn't trust her. I didn't listen as closely as I should have. Nadia was interesting. Nadia asked me questions back about my life, about the outside world, about things she said she missed. It felt less like an interview and more like a conversation with someone who happened to be locked behind reinforced glass. I told myself I was being a good researcher by building rapport. Looking back, I think I was just lonely, and she knew exactly how to use that. About 6 weeks into the job, one of our guards, a stage 3 inmate named Callahan, went into what looked like full cardiac arrest during a routine feeding. The infected don't have working hearts in any traditional sense, so the moment it happened, every alarm in that wing went off at once. Protocol said we weren't supposed to intervene directly, that any anomalous behavior in containment got observed from a distance until a medical team in full protective gear could assess the situation. But the guard on duty that day, a big, easy-going man named Terrence, who I used to eat lunch with most Fridays, broke protocol. He went in. I watched the whole thing happen on a monitor from the observation room, and I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. Callahan's convulsions stopped the second Terrence got close enough to check for a pulse that was never going to be there. What happened next took about 4 seconds. Callahan's hand shot up, closed around Terrence's throat, and pulled him down hard enough that I heard the crack through the monitor speaker before I understood what I was looking at. By the time backup arrived, it was already over. Callahan had to be put down with 3 rounds to the skull, and Terrence didn't make it. It was ruled an isolated incident, a fluke, a stage 3 that had simply figured out how to fake distress well enough to bait a rescue response. Warden Calloway seemed shaken by it in a way I hadn't seen from her before. I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have. It wasn't until almost a week later, going back through old interview transcripts for an unrelated report, that I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Callahan had spent 2 sessions with Nadia in the shared observation yard the month before his death, back before that privilege got revoked facility-wide. In the transcript from his very last session with me, 3 days before he died, Callahan had used a phrase, playing possum, that I'd only ever heard Nadia use before, in almost the exact same context, during one of our own conversations. If Callahan's death had been the worst of it, I probably would have stayed at Blackhollow anyway. Curiosity, like I said, has always been my worst habit. But about 2 months after that, we received a new intake, a suspected stage 4 picked up from a containment breach at a smaller regional facility that had since been shut down. Nobody had properly classified it before it arrived. That turned out to be a fatal oversight. I was walking toward the East Wing with my supervisor, Dr. Petrov, when we found the new arrival's holding cell standing open and completely empty. There was blood on the floor, a lot of it, and no bodies. Petrov didn't hesitate. He slammed the alarm before I'd even finished processing what I was looking at, and within seconds, the entire facility was screaming with sirens. Code Black. All non-essential personnel to the safe wing immediately. We ran. I remember the hallway seeming to stretch on forever, other researchers pouring out of side offices and joining the current of people moving toward containment. Somewhere behind us, I heard something that didn't sound human anymore. A wet, tearing shriek that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I didn't look back. I don't think anyone did. The safe wing at Blackhollow is a reinforced bunker built to withstand a siege, stocked with enough supplies to hold the entire staff for months if it ever came to that. Once the door sealed behind the last of us, Warden Calloway got on the radio with security teams sweeping the lower levels, and for a while it seemed like we might actually be safe. It was Dr. Petrov who noticed Nadia's monitor feed was frozen on a single, unmoving frame. The timestamp stuck at a point almost 20 minutes earlier than the current time. Nobody else seemed to register what that meant. I did. Somebody had looped the footage. The escaped Stage 4 was eventually cornered and destroyed in the boiler room 3 floors down, at the cost of 2 more members of the security team. By the time the all clear sounded and we were let out of the safe wing, I already had a theory forming that I didn't want to believe. I went straight to Nadia's cell instead of going home. She was sitting exactly where she always sat, hands folded, waiting, as if she'd known I was coming. "Rough day, Doctor," she said, before I'd even opened my mouth. I asked her point blank whether she'd had anything to do with the breach. She just smiled, the same patient, understanding smile she always gave me, and told me that if I really wanted an honest conversation, I should ask better questions. I asked her about Callahan. I asked her about the frozen security feed. Her smile never wavered. She told me, almost gently, that a woman locked in a 9x9 cell for 2 years learns to be resourceful with whatever tools she's given, and that if certain members of the security staff occasionally found themselves more sympathetic to her situation than regulation technically allowed, that was hardly something she could be blamed for. I asked her why. Why any of it? She leaned forward against the glass, and for just a second the pleasant mask slipped enough that I saw something underneath it that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Because none of you understand what you're actually keeping in this building," she said. "You think Stage 5 is the end of the classification chart. It isn't. There's something past Genesis, Doctor, and it's the only thing in this entire facility patient enough to wait for the right person to let it out." I left that conversation more unsettled than I'd been since the day I first arrived at Blackhollow, and I made the mistake of not reporting a single word of it to Warden Calloway that night. I told myself I needed more information first. Looking back, I think some small, curious part of me wanted to know what she meant, more than I wanted to protect the facility. That mistake is the reason for everything that happened next. 3 days later, Warden Calloway called an all-staff briefing to announce that, following the recent breach, several high-risk inmates would be temporarily relocated to a secondary facility, while Blackhollow underwent a full security overhaul. Among the inmates scheduled for transfer were both surviving apex specimens, and to my genuine surprise, Nadia herself. I volunteered to ride along with the transport convoy, telling myself it was standard procedure for a researcher to accompany a subject of interest during relocation. The warden didn't question it. I'm not sure whether that was trust or exhaustion. Maybe both. The transfer convoy left before dawn, 3 armored transport trucks moving in a slow, careful line down the same unmarked service road I'd first driven in on 8 months earlier. I rode in the truck directly behind the one carrying Nadia, close enough to hear the low hum of its engine through the open partition. We were maybe 20 minutes out when the truck ahead of us swerved hard, tires screaming against asphalt, and came to a violent stop at an angle across both lanes. I heard gunfire before I understood what was happening. By the time our driver slammed the brakes and threw the door open, Nadia was already standing in the open bay of the truck ahead of us, one of our own security team's rifles slung casually over her shoulder, and 3 guards were on the ground. She hadn't broken out. Someone had let her out. I don't know exactly how long she'd been building loyalty inside Blackhallow's walls before that morning, whether it was months or the entire 2 years she'd been in custody. But standing in the wreckage of that convoy, it was clear she hadn't been planning an escape. She'd been planning a coup. I'm not proud of what happened over the next several minutes. In the chaos, I found myself dragged toward the open truck at gunpoint, pushed inside next to the reinforced transport crate holding the second apex specimen, its containment temperature already climbing far past safe levels thanks to someone tampering with the truck's systems before we'd ever left the facility. Nadia crouched in front of me, close enough that I could see there was nothing warm left behind her eyes anymore. Whatever act she'd been putting on for 2 years finally completely dropped. "You were the only one who ever actually listened to me, Doctor," she said. "That's the only reason you're still breathing right now. Try to remember that." She told me to open the crate. I want to tell you I refused. I want to tell you I was braver than that. The truth is, I don't fully know why I did what I did next, whether it was fear, or some last flicker of the same reckless curiosity that got me hired at Blackhollow in the first place. But I reached for the crate's release panel anyway. Before my hand ever touched it, gunfire erupted from behind us. Warden Calloway's own vehicle finally catching up to the convoy, and in the scramble that followed, Nadia was gone, vanished into the tree line at the edge of the road. And I never saw her again. The apex specimen was put down before it fully thawed. 4 more members of staff didn't survive that morning. Warden Calloway never once blamed me publicly for what happened, though I've caught the way she looks at me sometimes, and I understand now exactly what that look means. Blackhollow reopened under tighter security about 6 weeks after the convoy incident, and I'm still there, still running interviews, though my clearance level has been quietly reduced, and I'm never left alone in a room with a stage 3 anymore. Nadia has never resurfaced, not as far as I've been told, though every few months there are whispers of unexplained infections cropping up in places that shouldn't have any connection to Blackhollow at all. Small towns, isolated farms, always a little too far from anywhere for the news to notice. I still think about what she said, about something past Genesis, patient enough to wait for the right person. I don't know if she was lying to unsettle me or telling the truth to recruit me. Some nights I'm not sure which possibility scares me more. I don't know where Nadia is right now, or what she's planning, or how many more people like Callahan she's already found inside these walls. But I know she's out there somewhere, and I know that wherever she ends up next, she's going to need someone new to listen to her. I just hope, whoever they are, they're smarter than I was. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more. And remember, if you ever find yourself working somewhere like Blackhollow, don't let the quiet ones talk to you for too long.